a boy each week, on Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word, and consecrate the holy bread. Everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, the miracles don't happen still. But now I can't keep track, cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but find where there isn't one. Holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. Now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverend air, cause everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Read a questioning child's face, and say it's not a testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, and say it's not a sacrament, I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, and saw a little red-winged bird, shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverend air, cause everything is holy now. Everything is holy now.
It's nice to be here. How's that? Yeah, it's great to be here in Bremerton. I drove this morning from Ellensburg. Just got up early. We had an annual meeting last night in Ellensburg. I worked it that way because I discovered on Google Maps that it's less time to drive here from Ellensburg than it is from Whidbey Island. Well, the distance the crow flies is probably 1/10 that distance between the two ferries that involved. I've been around Northwest UU circles for a bit of a while. I can remember when you all started up and built this church. Rosemary Dougal has been a friend of mine since probably about 1980. One of my mentors into the ministry was Reverend Gretchen Wood. I'm not sure all you remember her, but I assume some of you do. A couple days ago, I counted the number of UU churches in the state of Washington that I preached at, and I couldn't believe it. It came to 26, and this is my first time here, so I got 27 notches on my star. So everything is holy now. A very UU song, I think. Actually, I believe Peter Mayer, who composed the song, is a UU. When I first heard it recently, I thought, yes, this could be the anthem of our Seventh Unitarian Universalist principle. We covenant to respect the independent web of all of existence of which we are are apart. We come to respect the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. These themes, everything is holy now, and our independent web, are worthy of exploration and remembering as we are still remembering and reflecting on the significance of Earth Day. Earth Day last week. Coming at a time when our national leadership is proposing to gut initiatives designed to protect her, it may be the most significant Earth Day yet. Here this morning on the edge of the Salish Sea is a great place to contemplate the need to nourish and repair our planet, for it's too late because it is our home. A holy place where we came from and return. As I already said, my home is also on the Salish Sea, not that far from here. And on Whidbey Island, my wife, Frances, and I are blessed and enchanted daily by a landscape similar, where madrona trees and driftwood blend together, and the clarity of light and shadow and the vistas and the seabirds inspire Frances's art and her dreams. Last week we sat on our deck and viewed a migrating gray whale. We didn't get an orca, but we got a few migrating gray whales. And we saw a coyote crossing our yard, and a northern goshawk, perhaps attracted to the California quail that I admit to feeding cracked corn to, crossed our yard. We watched the arc of the sun as it changes the seasons there. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his 1836 essay called Nature, observed that to the attentive eye, every moment of the year has its own beauty. And in the same field it beholds every hour a picture which was never been seen before and which will never be seen again. Ralph Waldo was steeped in Eastern Vedic religion, and I'm sure he would have accepted and resonated with the message, everything is holy now. But it is, for most of us, a relatively novel new concept. How many of us at one time confronted the assumption, embedded in that song, the assumption that the holy was only found inside the walls of a church, or in the miracles that occurred in the long ago past and were recorded in a single book? Holy water was rare at best, barely wet my fingertips, writes Peter Mayer. I've been there, I know. It is in much of our Western religious tradition, including some of our UU heritage. It's a dualistic rather than a unitary understanding of our world. A world grounded on either or, good, bad, sacred or profane, carnal body or soul purity, material or spiritual. Could it be that these divisions might distract from a fully joyous spiritual engagement with all creation? Some of us, when we were struck by these contradictions, often in adolescence, it seems, simply discarded any concept of holy or the sacred. The extreme of this reaction is probably a cynical or nihilistic conclusion that nothing outside moi really matters or has any value. But Peter, my Aaron, our theme song, Holy Now, takes a path in a diametrically opposite direction, doesn't he? He enlarges an understanding of what is sacred, what is divine. He found it in the church water, but no less in the power, mystery, and beauty of the universe. This morning, he writes, I stood and saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head, and I remember when church let out how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. That old story, as I said, insisted upon a rather radical dualism between a creator God and the world, with God being all spirit and the world being all corrupted matter or body. The former created and judged the world, but was otherwise absent from it. The one exception to this divine absence is a peculiar relationship with a single species. Guess which one that one? Most of us were formed by a story in which we are basically the Creator's darlings. The special ones who merit the possibility of salvation and were given to not domination over all other life forms. In any event, our heritage would have you and I assume we are divinely ordered to be at the pinnacle of the hierarchy of the natural world. And what's more, we humans have been given dominion to do as we will with all other life forms and matter constituting the earth. It is good for us to go out and multiply, and all else is secondary to our welfare. And you know, though, the world has arrived at a pivot point in history. The darlings of creation have become the rogue elephants, rampaging across the planet. And I'm referring to human-caused climate change, which many of us marched about yesterday. Climate change, ocean acidification, the sixth great extinction, etc., etc. And as we know, these devastating realities essentially implicate what? The carbon fuel industry. But telling you all that is probably not new. It's only the first premise, the overwhelming scientific consensus. And much of our conversation doesn't get beyond that first premise. It doesn't take up a second premise. And that is the moral premise. What to do about it and why. Kathleen Dean Moore was Dean of the Philosophy and Religion Department at Oregon State University for many years, and also a best-selling writer of essays about nature. I highly recommend them. Several years ago, she gave up that work at the University of Oregon in order to devote herself to speaking and writing about that second premise I was talking about, the moral premise of climate change. And the challenge she made is directly to us, you and I, folks, us in the spiritual, religious, ethical arena. Ours is the work of the second premise, the framing of moral values, the normative premises about what we care for, live for, die for, what matters. We are at the center of this hinge point of our time. What can be done to tip the scales towards a resilient and refulgent, to borrow another word from Ralph Waldo, refulgent future? Of course, the harm must stop, and we must radically reimagine our life ways, of course. But perhaps more importantly, More important is to change the story, the very story about who we are. We humans, not the lords of creation, but lives woven into a complex interdependence, a beautiful, unfolding planetary system. It's maybe a paradigm shift equivalent to that initiated in Poland by Copernicus in the 16th century. Turning back to our theme song. This must be a story and a theology and a spirituality that reserves no part of our heart or our mind for a holy other. And I mean both a W-H-O-L-L-Y, other, and a H-O-L-Y, other. Everything is holy now. This new story changes our focus on a human-centered way of thinking to an all-of-life way of thinking. And I would hesitate to say that acceptance of that story is not a choice, really. The only real question is how long will it take and how much damage will occur before this turning. The good news I would like to proclaim today, the good news, as Billy Graham used to say to get his audience's attention, is that we Unitarian Universalists have a bold head start toward framing that new theology or spirituality, and we don't have to be quiet about it. That, of course, is our seventh principle, and the seventh and final principle, in which you and I covenant to respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Can I get an amen for that? Amen. So it's fascinating, I think, to learn how our seventh principle came to be in the first place. It seems, and I was back there at the time, it seems the process of wordsmithing and finding consensus on our first six principles had gone on for many years leading up to our 1984 General Assembly in Columbus, Ohio. Basically, the first six principles represent attempts to restate fairly traditional Western faith themes. But by contrast, the seventh principle is more associated with Eastern religious themes. And it came about like this. It came about as a motion from the floor late in the 1984 General Session. And it was unanimously accepted without even significant debate. It was as if there was a collective sigh of course, it is self-evident. It is a self-evident truth of our age. Now, the seventh principle has been called our most peculiar and distinctive contribution to the world's religious agenda. And it was considered radical and blasphemous by many outside our faith when it was first adopted over 30 years ago. They said pantheism and paganism. You mean, it was asked sarcastically by one critic, you mean Christ was crucified to save plants and animals and dirt? Well, you still hear debates, echoes of this debate all the time in our current political conversation. Ideas like interdependence and reciprocity, ideas that even sound modestly seventh principle-ish, are challenged by some political leaders as being based on false theology. Bill O'Reilly refers to people that have those kind of ideas as snowflakes. You may have read about that recently. Those who dare suggest that somebody other than God just might have had an effect on the level of the seas are lampooned. But we're gaining ground. Hope. In his recent encyclical climate change, Pope Francis almost got on board. He stated this, I quote, "Although it is true that we Christians have at times incorrectly interpreted the Scriptures, nowadays we must forcefully reject the notion that our being created in God's image and given dominion over the earth justifies absolute dominion over other creatures." The old story, fostered in large part by his church, he called then tyrannical anthropomorphism. I say, go Pope, you snowflake. Pope's words are a helpful move forward, but they won't get you all the way to the seventh principle, which remains a relatively radical theological position. Among other things, our covenant toward the interdependent web of all existence calls us to reverence before this world, not just before some future far off one. It calls us to reverence before the miraculous world right below our feet, right now. Yeah, including the dirt. There you will find our scriptures, the ones we are called to interpret. Our seventh principle suggests that the world is relational rather than hierarchical. In this world, neither God or man are at the center. The center is, in fact, a diffuse web or matrix from which all being emerges and is sustained. We are invited to take responsibility for the whole, since all things impinge on all others. Everything matters. It offers, wrote UU theologian David Bumbaugh, it offers a vision of a world where the sacred is incarnated in every moment, in every aspect of being, a world where God is always present and always fully at risk. I think we would do well to place our seventh principle at the heart of our faith for the 21st century, as a forethought rather than an afterthought. It passes a criteria that any religion relevant to the 21st century ought to pass. It is consistent with the core learnings of science. And it gives us a foundation for a moral premise that I was talking about. It informs us where reverence ought to be directed and what is a failure of reverence. It informs us where reverence ought to be directed and what is a failure of reverence. It implies an obligation to our children, to leave to our children a world at least as rich as we were given. And it precludes an indifference to the suffering of others. And moreover, it is salvational, literally. Salvation. As the poet and legendary visionary Václav Havel warns, he says, "Our destiny is not dependent merely on what we do for ourselves, but also on what we do for Earth, the Earth as a whole. If we endanger her, she will dispense with us in the interests of a higher value, that is, life itself." End quote. And then takes me back to our theme song. It used to be a heaven, used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, because everything is holy now. How might we live reverently? Live our seventh principle. Consider for a moment the blast zone, not long after the eruption of Mount St. Helens. For miles and miles, the devastation seemed utterly complete. Many thought it might be a century or more before life returned. Before life could once again thrive in such a wasteland. But abundant flora and fauna did return. reality is that in little pockets under the rocks, in the crevices, traces of life found a way to survive and seed its return. Kathleen Dean Moore, who I referred to earlier, refers to these as refugios, the Spanish refugios. And she challenges each of us to create refugios of life in our pockets of the world, our homes, our yards, our communities. Create refugios of the imagination. Small gestures tend to multiply exponentially. May mean a fierce defense against all who would wreck our world. It may mean nurturing a sapling or finding a way to cut back on your contribution to landfill. Being a refugio is to live our lives as works of art. Works of art that embody our deepest values. Finally, putting our independent web in all its parts into a religious context causes us to pause in awe. Awe leads to appreciation. And what we learn to appreciate, we just tend to care for. So we are called to appreciate, to give attention, admiration, love, all of life's beauty, diversity and creativity, the whales, people, the shimmering madrona trees, the tree frogs, and the goshawks. And yeah, dirt. Dirt or compost or earth, all these are the words of our Creator, our scriptures. We proclaim their holiness. Namaste. Namaste. And may I invite you to rise as you are able and join in closing hymn number 318, We Would Be One.